And right, how can you effectively, stay there, Dr. Clay, I'm warning you, how can you effectively communicate cybersecurity trends to the corporate boardroom? Now, this is what we're going to find out in our next session. So we're going to explore strategies for translating complex technical insights into actionable business decisions, enabling better cyber-aware leaders in a fastly evolving cyber threat landscape. So I'm very excited to welcome our final speakers onto the stage. We have Alexandra Rose, Director of Government Partnerships, and Stacey Leidwinger, Vice President of Brand and Portfolio Marketing. Hello, ladies.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. And of course, you're closing out our content sessions today. Very, very excited to hear your final words. So without further ado, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. We appreciate it. Well, Alex, I'm really excited to join the stage with you today and close out our session maybe with what I think is one of the most important takeaways is we learned a lot today, but how do you really talk about everything we learned at a board level? Obviously, boards aren't always going to want to go deep in the type of attacks we're seeing, threat groups that we're discussing, even tactics. I think what boards want to hear is the way they talk, the way they speak. And one of the things that boards are responsible for is really managing organizational risk. And I think one of the things that I know you spend a lot of your time talking to boards is don't think of cybersecurity as this new thing or to handle something differently. Instead, incorporate cybersecurity into your risk discussions. So just like you build in plans to support if an executive leaves, or risk if a new entrant comes into your market, or if there's some climate or political change that impacts your supply chain, cybersecurity should be part of that risk discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we'd like everyone to watch every presentation, read the reports in depth, but not everyone loves all the nerdy in-depth detail stuff, and we have to meet people where they are. And so you're exactly it. I think framing things around risk helps us slide in there with how they're already thinking through the problem set and really helps people make the right decisions when it comes to security.
And I liked how you said framing, because that's what we're going to talk about today. So first part of our discussion is really how do you frame the right discussion with the board? And we identified kind of these three topics. I think the first that I'd love your thoughts are on boards should really be asking each other as well as their business, if we were attacked, what would we lose? What would be the impact to our business?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a loaded question, right? You stand to lose a lot. And each business or organization has to be able to make this decision for themselves, identify what those risks are. And so let me characterize it a little bit more. I'm thinking things like financial loss, right? You get hit with a ransomware attack, you're making a decision to pay a ransom or not. Either way, you have that cost of recovery. And that's not just in ransomware, it's any type of cyber attack. There's going to be a cost to recovery financially, but also reputationally, right? So if I think through data loss, I think of those things together with that reputational loss. And so thinking through, you have your own employees' data, of course, right? Which we don't want to lose that. You want to keep the trust with your employees. You want to know your information is safe and secure. But your customer data, you've spent years building up trust and, like that, it's gone. But ideally, you have either plans in place that better protect it, a plan of how do you respond, which we'll talk about in a moment here. But ultimately, you need to have security plans in place that protect you from that loss. So it's having the conversation about, oh wait, what do we stand to lose when it comes to data within our in our environment, our own IP information, for example. And then I think the other piece are really the legal and operational consequences. So there are different regulatory frameworks. You might have to deal with legal issues and address what comes with those. And then lawsuits. If you lose data, there is the risk of lawsuit. And so these are things that you think through. They're going to be unique to each business, but you have to think about what do you stand to lose should you be impacted by a cyber activity.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things, especially business leaders often ask, how do we help? Even identifying where that information is stored. So often it's the business owners that really own the applications, the use of application. And so they need to be responsible for helping identify where this information is stored, how it's stored, and who has access to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I think, you think about, oh, what are my files? Where did I store this? Is this in my email? Is it? You have to understand what you have, not just when it comes to the information, but your entire environment, your tool sets, knowing your vulnerabilities, and that, take a look at what you have and know what is out there.
So I think with that goes into really the second question that boards really should be asking themselves and of their leaders in terms of, so what's our business continuity plan? Unfortunately, everyone kind of realizes that there is some day that they're going to get hit by an attack. I think the question isn't almost of if, it's more of a when. But what can organizations do to make sure that they minimize any disruption in the business?
Yeah, it's preparing for the worst and hoping that day doesn't come, right? And if it does come, that, oh wait, I know how to hit the ground running. It's still a bad day, but I'm going to get out I'm going to come out the other side of this, crawling or walking at least, and have business or operations intact. And so really having one of your, incident response plan. What are you going to do when that bad day comes? But you don't just have the plan. You actually have to take it off, like dust it off every once in a while and say, oh, I should exercise this. Is this still current? What do I need to change? Does Stacy still work here? Is this who I call when I need to put out my communications plan? And on that note, you have to know what you're going to communicate, right? Stakeholders, internal and external. You need to know what you're going to tell people. That's coming up, crafting your form of words and filling in those blanks depending on the issue at hand. We all know if people don't have in a vacuum of information, they're going to make it up. And you get that game of telephone going, and all of a sudden, both inside your company, people are freaking out, and then externally, there starts to be chatter. And so making sure you have a thorough communications plan. And then ultimately, it's really about that backup and recovery as well, right? You think, oh wait, we get hit. There's many organizations, we talk with municipalities all the time, right? They've been hit, they're able to actually get up and operate pretty thoroughly by paper and pen. But if you don't know that you can do that, you're going to be running into some hard times. And there are other organizations that once they're down, they're down. And you need to know what those boundaries look like for you. You need to know how long you can operate offline in order to accurately update your stakeholders, right? And I think that it's absolutely key that you're thinking through all of those things.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things you hit on, which is so important, is exercise the plan. Unfortunately, you and I both have worked with customers that thought they had a backup only to try to execute the backup, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Even here in SecureWorks, we are a company of cybersecurity experts, and we regularly test our IR plan, our critical situations, and everyone in the company is part of it who's responsible. And things do change, and it's important that you exercise. So I think that's a big message for boards as well, because they're also part of the plan. They can't sit back.
Yeah, and it's so important for those who aren't actively doing something related to the threat. We all want to jump in and help, and so everyone needs to know what their role is. If your job is to keep certain things rolling, so when everything is solved, that you're up and running, people need to know that so that they know that what they're doing is important and keeping the wheels turning, so to speak.
Absolutely. And that goes to kind of the third question that I think boards should really be requiring their senior leadership to answer, which is, how are we investing today to avoid the breach and the threats of today? Yep. And I think this is an evolution. I know you're going to talk about it. It's not a one answer once a year. This is something that needs to be an ongoing dialogue. So talk about how that conversation flows.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be unique to each organization, right? We want folks to have a robust end-to-end security plan. But robust end-to-end is different for each organization. Hopefully, as we talk through some of this, will help you think about what that is for your company. Many of you already know what that looks like, and that's good. It's continually asking the questions. And so you have your cybersecurity solutions, right? You also have the employee training. We were talking about this on the train here to Bristol just yesterday, that this isn't just a technical problem. It's a social problem. We heard Rafe's presentation earlier, which is quite a presentation, and I wish it could say it's one-off, but we see it happen over and over and over. And so if I take a moment to step back on this, I often talk about this in the context of my own grandparents, right? We want people to be using their technology that's available to them. This isn't about scaring people and saying, don't ever click on the link, don't ever look at this, don't ever use a QR code. We might have some of those restrictions depending on where you work, but ultimately it's saying, I want my grandparents to use the banking app to ease their, it exists for a reason, right? It helps them get to their information in a quicker fashion. I don't want them scared to do it. And so how do you train employees to smartly think through, that's not my bank. I probably shouldn't click on a link. There's no reason they'd be messaging me. And you can do similar things for all of the other types of threats are out there. So the human element is absolutely key, and it's going to be a continuous thing. We need to talk about what's out there, but also give people that comfort that, oh, I'm making this decision. I'm taking the critical thinking steps and going through this. And then the last piece I'll touch on here is threat intelligence. Obviously, near and dear to our hearts. That's why we're here today. Hopefully you watch, there's a wealth of 20 plus videos, right, on the on-demand sessions as well. But it's having partners that understand the in-depth nature of that threat landscape. So I think about it in a bit of an inverse pyramid. We as an organization are going through billions of data points a year, thousands of incident response engagements, and we're distilling that down to what we say is our annual threat report, 50 pages. Like I said at the top, I'd love for everyone to read that. Please to go, tomorrow morning over your coffee, whatever it might be, this evening over a drink, but take a look at that. But we know that's not the reality. We need to meet people where they are, and so we've taken it down from there. And I think if we go to the next slide, actually, we might want to talk a little bit about what that looks like.
Absolutely. So I think this is time to really kind of almost shift gears. So you've talked about kind of the 3 questions that boards should be asking, also prepared to answer as stakeholders in the company. But as you mentioned, we went ahead and issued the State of the Threat report that came out from the Counter Threat Unit, and we really highlighted a lot of the key threats that have evolved and changed over the landscape for the past year. With that, it's a lot of information. But I think what you've identified on this next slide with the top 8 are really the things that people should be concerned about.
Yeah.
Do you want to walk through some of these?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned it, we took it from that 50-page report. We boiled it down to this top 8 that you see here, and these slides will be made available for everyone. We want to be able you to take these and run with them. But these 8 points, in our perspective, these are made for you and your security team to be reviewing, right? Let's walk through the 3 questions that we had. Let's see which of these apply to us as we make our recommendations and asks to our leadership for what we need in our security program. And so if we use just one of these, pop one out to talk through. I think we had it up on the slide there just a moment ago. Yep, there we go. This ransomware piece, this is pulled directly from our threat report. And I think where we need to key in here is you look towards the bottom of it and you see that median figure of 24 hours. That means dwell time. Threat actor gets into your environment and within 24 hours, you're had. And that is a significant difference from years past.
And I think we really should stop here for a minute because I've been in security for a number of years. 24 hours is no time at all. I mean, it used to be that threat actors would come in for months, weeks, and really sit there and wait, linger, and then have a major attack after they've watched the environment. I think what you and your team are saying is that now threat actors are getting in as fast as they can, taking whatever they can get and getting out, which doesn't give organizations a lot of time. So this stat alone, I feel like should be presented to every board on why their organizations need to evolve and progress their cyber defense programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that inverted pyramid, again, it's meant to be the foundation for your conversation. So the board doesn't need to hear all of that. The board doesn't even need to hear all 8. They need a bit of the facts. They need to know that what you've pulled together is supported in factual information and that you're making recommendations on the data that's out there, right? And that's what we're aiming to give here. And if I, work through that ransomware example quickly, we talk about what you have to lose. Well, money does matter, right? Money going out the door. You have reputation at stake. What was the second pillar that we were talking about? The
business continuity. Got to keep businesses up and running.
Right. And so what's your plan? Do you have something in place? And security, what were your security program beforehand? You know that your board and other stakeholders are going to be coming to you and saying, why did this happen? And ultimately, the way I like to think about this and talk about it is you want to be operating from a defensible position. So you've taken into account the threat landscape at large. You're watching how it evolves. You have your response plans. You're continually checking in and involving your security program. Things can still happen. And so it's about, I feel confident in knowing that we were doing what we could for what we knew. Hindsight's 2020. Of course, you're always going to spot things, but ultimately, if you knew what you were doing and you're at that defensible position, and that's where you want to be.
And I think with going through that, you and I spoke a little bit about what we talk with customers as they think about building that defensible position, and it really comes down to 4 areas. The first is visibility. So as you pointed out earlier, it's understanding where is your critical information, what is your critical information. I also think this is where vulnerability management comes in. So we heard a couple parts of the presentations today that discussed it's not that threat actors are necessarily targeting any one organization. They're honestly looking for the easiest ones to get into. And that's why a vulnerability program is so critical in having an eye on all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You point out visibility, context, detection, response. Those are the 4 words. If we started off at top, you've really summed it up here, I think.
And that context piece, as we said, right? Absolutely critical. You need to understand everything in your organization. And then what's near and dear to my heart is the detection and response. And I thought Chris did a great job talking about detection and the need for timeliness and the context in order to build good detections. And then Clay expanded upon that. And then we had a lot of discussions around the response and making sure that you have a plan, as you said, but also building in as much automated actions as you can once you find these threats.
Yeah,
but I think organizations, if they can handle these 4, they're going to be in a better position.
That's exactly it. I agree.
Well, great.
Great having a conversation with you.
Yes, thank you, Alex. I know why you get invited to talk to so many boards and other federal organizations in your role, given the insights you shared today.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, ladies. You're both seasoned pros, clearly. Really appreciate your time. And of course, Alex, you can breathe now. Yes, you can take a breath. But Stacey, I'm going to keep you on the stage. I'm going to trap you because I do actually know that you'd love to share some final thoughts with our audience. So I will let you do that now.
Yes.